Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Look what I've got. I've got the Apple Vision Pro. Rather beautiful looking, isn't it? So we are going to spend some time talking about that today. I'm going to try to be efficient. There's so much to cover. It's absolutely crazy. I got it about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, so I'm trying to get a video out relatively quickly, but going to go through a whole bunch of stuff. One thing that's important to note is you can do screen recordings inside of the Apple Vision Pro, but there are things that are limited. For example, some games and videos and stuff like that. It won't play them back. I assume because of copyright restrictions and things like that. And also there is no sound recorded, which kind of is a bummer. So anyway, a lot of the stuff you'll see will be overlaid as I'm talking about it, doing my basic unboxing review, etc. Speaking of, let's get to unboxing. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All, Apple Vision Pro with Zeiss lenses. So these are because I have a prescription, so we'll see. This thing is very large and very heavy. And let's go ahead and open her up. Let's open up this beastie. So, interesting packing. And I don't want to just dump this thing, so we're going to be a little, whoa, geez, okay. Okay, just cardboard, no big deal. So there we have the Vision Pro, and I assume, yep, these are the Zeiss lenses that go with that. So I will put these into this to get it prescription ready. So, all right, and so box, very cool. Vision Pro on the side, obviously the way to open it. Apple, always with the good packaging. You can never fault them for their packaging. So, and that looks like there's on this side as well. So we'll peel this one off. And first look, man, I've seen everybody else talking about, oh my goodness, this thing is big. Woo, wow. and a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. Interestingly, it has a very nice cover on it. So, oh yeah, suddenly you're like, ooh, that looks cool. So yep, we got the cover. There is a cardboard piece that is protecting the inside. So very well, again, always well packaged. And here you can see the inside of it. So a couple of lenses there. And let's see what else we have in here. Very nice spot for it to sit on. Wow, this is a lot more paperwork than Apple usually has. So obviously it is a new product, more paperwork. Goodness gracious. And this says dual loop band. So I guess there's another band that you can put on here if you're interested. Then we have standard USB-C to USB-C cable. We have ye olde battery pack with, I think this is only 3,300 milliamp hours, which is just crazy. It seems very, very small considering how big that pack is. And we have a charger, of course, for that. So it actually does come with a charger as opposed to the iPhone that doesn't. We also have a light seal cushion. So we have some other stuff in here, which I assume you can put on, maybe if you're wearing glasses or something. I'm not exactly positive, so we will have to look at that. Anyway, that's the stuff. Of course, this is the star of the show. And also these glasses as well. I will do a quick video on how to put those on as well. But obviously they go inside here and they snap on, and that is what you get with the Apple Vision Pro. So as you can see, the packaging and everything is beautiful. You would expect nothing less of Apple. It was surprisingly large. I did not expect the box and all of that stuff to be so big, and it was also quite heavy as well. The Vision Pro here is not the lightest thing in the world. It doesn't feel too bad on the head. I'm going to get to that later. But first of all, a comparison with the Meta Quest 2. I don't have access to the Meta Quest 3, unfortunately, but I do have access to the Meta Quest 2. So you can see here the size comparison. The Meta Quest 2, of course, has the battery inside the front of the unit as opposed to the Apple Vision Pro, which has it as an external pack. Talk more about that later, but it makes the Meta Quest bigger, much more bulky on the front of it, and also actually slightly more front heavy. When I put the two of them on, the Meta Quest, even though it's a lighter unit by far, feels a little more like draggy on my head. So some other VR headsets have gotten around that by putting the battery on the back of the head. I will also get to that later on in this review for the Apple Vision Pro. As far as the quality of what you're seeing, the Apple Vision Pro is just leaps and bounds past the Meta Quest 2. Don't know about the 3 because I haven't had a chance to use that yet, but I would expect, as it's a consumer device, that that, the Apple Vision Pro will be outstandingly much better. Of course, the Vision Pro does not come with anything. You use your hands as your interaction thing, whereas the MetaQuest has the sort of wand things that you use. It makes it significantly more cumbersome to use the MetaQuest, and certainly you can't do any kind of fine motor sort of things. It's basically just an entertainment device, but it does give you haptic feedback, which I will get back to later. Interestingly enough, even though Apple put the battery outside and it's a large and substantial battery pack, it's only 3,300 milliamp hours, which is a little odd. You would think it would be more substantial than that since it's an external pack, but even though it's an external battery pack, the two of them get approximately the same amount of battery. I think the Vision Pro, I haven't, extensively tested them till death or whatever, but my guess is that the Vision Pro will get approximately an extra half an hour for doing reasonable amount of work than the MetaQuest. So it'll get a little bit longer, but they're both on the order of about 2 hours of useful battery life. And of course, currently the MetaQuest has a significantly larger catalog of software and everything that you can use it with because it's been around for much, much longer. So the Vision Pro is a much more beautiful, refined piece of hardware. It looks good. It looks kind of like ski goggles. More or less, it looks like you're wearing ski goggles. The MetaQuest looks kind of silly. The pass-through is terrible. I mean, you can just see the sort of a black and white. I believe that's a big part of where the MetaQuest 3 is substantially better, but still the pass-through is not going to be as good as the Vision Pro. But of course, the big caveat to all of this is that the Vision Pro costs 10 times more than the MetaQuest. Is it worth 10 times more? That's what we're going to try to answer here today. I'm going to talk mostly about the Vision Pro by itself, but I thought it would be worth comparing this to kind of the state-of-the-art consumer product that's out there right now. So Apple Vision Pro hardware, what is it like? It's absolutely beautiful, as you can see from the videos and everything that they have. And I'm not allowed to post any of those because for some reason Apple won't let you post their own videos that are like their marketing things of how it's made. But the product itself is quite beautiful. It feels very refined and everything, especially for a 1.0 product. Much, much nicer than the original iPhone, which I had, which felt a little bit, thrown together and like it might break if you squeezed it too hard or something. This thing feels like a really, really solid, well thought out, well refined piece of hardware. I do find, however, that it does feel, when you're wearing it on your head, it feels heavy on the front. It feels super heavy on the front right now, but it feels much better when you put it on. And of course, it's a little difficult for me to do that while I'm talking to you, but it still feels heavy on the front. It also has very, very nice speakers here on the side, and I tried it out with my AirPods, and it worked great with those. It just connected right up. In fact, I didn't even have to pair them. It just said it was paired. So, we'll get back to the ecosystem part of things, but all of that kind of stuff worked fantastically with this. Worked great with the AirPods. Everything is sort of magnetic. You can even take off this part here, which is like the sort of, part that sticks on. There's pads that go on here that you can also take off magnetically. I'll talk more about the lenses right now, but I've got Zeiss lenses in here for my prescription. Those fit on magnetically. So everything is magnetic. This guy right here obviously connects up for the power and everything. And you've got venting in the bottom and venting at the top to pull all of the amazing amount of heat that it's generating. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the sensors and everything because a lot of people have talked about it before. This is more about the usability of it, but it has got a ridiculous amount of sensors, as you can sort of see right there. It's got cameras all over the place, including inside of it. It's got the R1 chip, which allows it to do a lot of real-time pass-through and everything. And it just, it feels really, really solid, but it is kind of front heavy. And I have a feeling after wearing it, I think the longest I wore it at once was about 1 hour, and it started to feel a little bit heavy, but there were other issues that were more important. As for the battery, the cable is super annoying. There's no other way to put it. It kind of goes backwards behind you and everything, but it's just a thing. It's like when you're vacuuming the floor and you're always having to pull the cable around and stuff like that, the power cord. It's that sort of a feeling where it's always like, it's sort of there. And if you don't have a pocket, it's super inconvenient. Of course, being a male, I tend to have pockets, so it's not that big a deal. But if you were a female wearing a dress or something like that, or a person who wanted to wear a dress, whatever, no judgment. Anyway, if you didn't have pockets, it would be very inconvenient what you would do with this battery pack. So it limits the clothing style choices and things like that you have in order to carry that. I will get back to that towards the end of the review about the battery pack itself. Of course, at a rated 2 hours or so, the battery life is going to be kind of an issue, but of course it's very easy to plug it in. And interestingly enough, Marquise Brownlee pointed this out, it's got the actual input power on it as on the same side, so it makes it very easy. If you stick it in your pocket, you can have it plugged into a source, and there's, the cables come out in the same direction instead of opposite. So somebody thought about that, and that was kudos on their part. Also really cool about this is these have very, very easily removable packs, right? So just like with the Apple Watch, it's all sort of magnetically connected, and you can easily pull these apart and snap them back on. They comes with two different straps, one of them like this and the other one which goes over your head, more like the traditional MetaQuest. And of course, it comes with the capability of getting lenses in there. So inside there are Zeiss lenses that I've installed in here. The process was very easy. And again, everything is magnetic with it. So you sort of stick it close to it and it goes snap and it snaps in place. Don't have to worry about fitment or anything like that. And once you place them into place, the Vision Pro knows that there are lenses there, and it asks you for a basic setup thing, including like scanning this little sort of QR code thing that came with the Zeiss lenses. And it figures out, I don't know, it does the math, it figures out how it all works, and it was substantially better. I did it first without the lenses, and, you know, a little bit blurry because I have astigmatism and stuff like that. So it wasn't perfect. When I put the lenses in and it adjusted itself, which it did in just, 30 seconds or a minute or whatever, it was substantially better, super, super crisp. So if you do have, a prescription, there are readers, so they're just kind of magnifying readers. So if you have a basic prescription, you can do that. Mine is a little bit more, involved because of astigmatism. The basic reader lenses are $100, and the more advanced full prescription lenses are $150. So, it's not nothing, but I guess in for a penny, in for a pound at this point, since you've already spent $4,000 on the headset itself. And finally, speaking of that, I spent extra money to get the mid-range amount of memory in the headset. I figured I didn't want to go with the minimum. So I think 256 is the standard, then it's 512 gigabytes is what I got, and then you can get a terabyte of memory inside the headset, but that got just way too expensive for me. So anyway, Apple, as always, they charge a ton for memory. They don't give it away for very cheap. Onto the UI, the first thing is that the placement of the windows and stuff in space is ridiculously solid. I can't even believe how good it is. It's like it's actually there. It's crazy. You can walk around. I mean, I walked around behind it. I actually went down into the basement where I was filming, and I could look up and I could see a window that I had placed up in the dining room. It was actually upstairs and I could see it. I couldn't really interact with it because it was too far away, but it was nuts. It was like it was still there. I was like, whoa, I can see that. So you can place windows and you can walk away into other rooms and you can come back again and the windows are still there. It's just ridiculous. I don't know how they do it. I mean, that's literally like magic. It's absolutely crazy how rock solid the window placement is. Continuing with the UI, the eye tracking, as other people have commented on, is just outrageous. I mean, it really is so good. It's so accurate because a lot of the stuff that you're looking at is relatively small, relatively speaking, and it's like it's able to go like, that's the spot you're looking at. Even like a keyboard, when you're typing, it's able to see, relatively like approximately like that size or something like that, like a little square or something that you're looking at. And you look at it and you pinch your fingers, look. You can also kind of like peck at the keyboard, but looking at the keyboard and then tapping your fingers was the obvious way to go, or using the microphone interface as well. And there's a microphone symbol. You just look at it, pinch your fingers together, and then you can talk. So if you want to go to a web URL or something like that, it's faster than actually typing it in. But for things like passwords and stuff like that, it's actually remarkably good. You do have to continue to stare at everything as you do your finger motion. Speaking of which, finger motions, basically, you look at your hands to set it up like this, and then you look at anything, including like a little X or something like that, and you pinch your fingers together. And that's basically about it. That's how you use it. You move your hand around like you're going to move a mouse, and then when you pinch, it's like a click on the mouse, and then you pull it. So wherever you were at the time, whether it's like a bar to pull a window to some other place, or an X or something like that, it's sort of like a mouse click. And if you hold your finger down, it's like a mouse press. So the interface is very transferable between a mouse and going to this sort of pinching, pressing sort of thing. Very, very intuitive. I do miss the haptic feedback. I wish it was there. You don't have haptics because it's just your hands, so there's nothing there. But there's generally some sort of visual feedback that tells you something is working and that you know that it's working well. As for the UI of using the crown and the picture button, I don't know quite what they call it, but anyway, there's a crown right here which you can press and rotate, and then there's this other button here which you can use to take pictures and things like that. Immersive pictures, which are slightly creepy, but again, very Minority Report, very, very cool. One thing I would definitely have preferred was that the crown was side mounted rather than top mounted, because I have to like move my hand up here and rotate it around. Would have been so much easier if it was sideways. Not quite sure why they didn't do it as a side mounted button. Maybe they wanted it to be easier to find, so it's like something like that. And pressing it obviously works much better this direction, but the rotation is slightly awkward. So it would have been nice for them to have placed it perhaps maybe even on the side here where it was a little bit side mounted, so it was kind of angled both directions, but I don't know. I'm sure they looked at many different options for that, but it's slightly annoying. It's just kind of like this, having to have your hand up here like this instead of down in a more comfortable position, rotating the crown. So as far as usability, it's great for a little while, but after like an hour, I started to get a headache using it. I think part of that was I was walking around, moving around very much through the space and everything, and I'm going to talk about that more when I get to the pass-through section. When you first launch the Apple Vision Pro after, plugging it in or something like that, it is a little bit slow to start up, a little bit less fast than I thought, but generally speaking, like right now, it's just sitting in standby mode, and so if I put it on, it detects me and it figures out that I'm there and it boots right up. So it's really, really fast in terms of that. So that works very well. You just, generally speaking, don't want to turn it off completely unless you want to wait for like 30 or 40 seconds for it to boot up. As for security and identity and things like that, it uses an iris scan, which is super Minority Report. It's very cool. The setup is very, very quick. It just does a thing. It asks permission, looks at your irises, figures it all out, because just like fingerprints, we all have unique irises, and it just does this thing where it goes like that, and it determines that it's you. So it's super cool. Between that and the hand motions and everything, I swear it feels like that scene in Minority Report where Tom Cruise is like looking around and like moving things all over the place, and then later on he's got the iris scans, and then they're doing ads for him and things like that. Speaking of which, no ads, nothing like that built in, so that's very, very nice. Apple doesn't do that kind of stuff. They respect your privacy, but I'm just saying the whole interface feels super much like Minority Report. When you're using it, you can go into immersive. You can rotate the crown and get kind of an immersive environment that gets rid of the whatever you're sitting in, things like that, and you can do like this desert look and everything, and it can do different times of day, all of that kind of stuff. Many of the apps have immersive modes and everything, and when you're in this immersive mode, whether it's watching like an Apple TV immersive video, or whether it's playing a game, or whether it's just this environment, or even the mindfulness app, which gives you like a little 5-minute thing where you can sort of get mindful and just kind of chill out for a minute, the immersion is outstanding. If you don't know, me and Misinformation just went to the Las Vegas Sphere. You can find the video up here if you're interested. But when we were there, I was just blown away by like the sort of, immersion of the whole thing. And this is almost as good as that. And I say almost because the one thing that's super annoying is, for whatever reason, there's this thing where you're supposed to look up and you're supposed to pinch to get access to sort of the control center. But for whatever reason, when you're in immersion mode, it likes to sit there right in the center of your vision, and the little arrow is there, and you're like, go away, go away, go away. So this is something that Apple needs to fix right away, because it completely ruins the effect of it to have that little arrow keep popping up and flickering right at your, right where you're looking. So hopefully with the next software revision, they will get rid of that. I would highly suggest that you just have to press the crown or something when you're in immersive mode to access any kind of controls, because it's just way cooler, especially when you're watching a video or something like that, because it's just way cooler to have that immersion not be interrupted by a stupid little flickering arrow, right? And it goes wherever you look, right? So it's not like sitting there off to the side or something. It's just like wherever you look, that's where the little arrow is. So it's very, very annoying. So they need to fix that right away. I would consider that a bug. I don't think that's supposed to be there, because you're supposed to actually have to look up to be able to see it. It's supposed to be out of your normal vision. One thing that's very upsetting about the UI, and it's actually better than I thought it was going to be. I was super upset about it before I got the Apple Vision Pro, but then after I got it, I realized it wasn't as bad. But that is the fact that it's single user centric. It's designed, it does the iris and retina scan and things like that for one person. Only one person can be like the user of this. It's one thing if you're talking about a $500 or $600 phone. It's quite another thing when you're talking about a $4,000 piece of kit, which you really do want to be able to share with other people. But one thing I did find out after I got it, which made it a little bit better, is there's a guest mode, and you can allow the guest to have basically full access. I don't think they can purchase things or stuff like that, but they can have full access to the apps if you choose, or you can just give them limited guest mode where it's something that's already open they can interact with. So there is a guest mode that does work. It requires like a resetting of the eyepieces and stuff like that, but that stuff is all pretty easy. The bigger problem is that the bands, like this is a medium band, so I've got medium that came with mine, because I guess when I scanned it, it realized I have a medium size head or something. My wife has a small size head, so we're going to have to go spend money. I have no idea how much these headbands are. I'm a little bit scared to even look, but hopefully there will be third-party ones or something like that soon that will be small, which will allow it to fit to her head better. She also has a prescription, and so we're going to have to get another set of Zeiss lenses. So it's kind of awkward and cumbersome to be able to maneuver between different people if you have to pull the lenses out, put new lenses in, go through the whole rigmarole of like resetting them and all that stuff, and swap out the bands, although the bands aren't that bad. So the single user centricness of the Apple Vision Pro is a bit of a problem because of the expense of it. And at the end, I'm going to get back to this because it is a significant problem with the Apple Vision Pro and its potential for growth. All right, on to the pass-through. If you don't know what that means, is just, you're looking out and you're seeing the world. It's very, very good when you're sitting and not moving your head. It looks super realistic. Although I have to say, like, the lights up here and things like that, or sunlight outside, the display gets saturated. It can't actually make that out. And so you get this kind of like, it just whites it out and it just isn't nearly as bright. Like if I stare at that light right now, I've got like little dots in my eyes and everything. But when you do it with the Vision Pro, there's only so bright that the screen can actually get. So, you can obviously tell it's a pass-through and not real, but in a normally lit room without really bright lights, it's very convincing. Where it falls apart is fast motion. If you turn your head quickly, if you're walking, especially if you're walking, because the whole thing kind of jiggles, even with the headband put on very tight. And by the way, after using it for a while, you get that classic sort of scuba mask sort of thing, right? As if you were wearing a dive mask. Happens with the MetaQuest as well. It just seems unavoidable because you have to keep it like super tight against your head so that it's not jiggling too much. But it is a little embarrassing when you take it off and you have this ring around your face like that. So anyway, you can move around. It's very easy to move around and to just walk around and do whatever you want to. But you're going to notice some jiggling, and also the refresh rate and everything of it sort of keeping up with the world is a little bit behind. And I swear that the two eyes get out of sync with each other. So they're updating at slightly different speeds. So when you're doing things like that, there's a definite sense of unreality with it and jigglingness or something like that. I am not susceptible to nausea and things, so it doesn't really affect me, but I have a feeling my wife, who is very susceptible to, feelings of queasiness and nausea, she would probably get super sick if she walked around with that after a couple of minutes. So it's not quite there yet. It's just almost. It's just not quite fast enough. I don't know if they'll be able to fix this eventually in software and just keep improving the software to make it better, or whether we're going to have to wait for version 2 of the Apple Vision Pro. Jeez, can't spend another $4,000 on these things. This is expensive. I purchased this myself, FYI. So I'm giving you totally honest stuff here. And I am sitting here thinking like, wow, was that worth it? That is a lot of money. I could have bought a really nice Mac Studio to use for editing and stuff like that instead of this. So I'm like, this is a significant undertaking in terms of expenses. So I hope you all appreciate that. But anyway, hopefully software revisions will allow it to get better and better at that. I think it probably will require the Apple Vision Pro 2 to get the pass-through a little bit more refined though, because I think it's just going to depend on processor speed and raw power. But to go back to a positive, when you're doing the pass-through and you go into a sort of immersion mode where you're playing a game, watching a movie, whatever, and it's very, very immersive. If a person gets right up in front of your face, they sort of appear through the mist, and it's very, very cool. They look like they're sort of like a floating ghost in the mist, and that part is really, really awesome. So I very much appreciate that. All right, so what about from the outside? What about when I'm using it and my wife comes up or my kid comes up or something like that? The eyes, even though Apple really talked a lot about that, they're like the eyes, they're really, really hard to see. And they spend a lot of money and time creating these eyes and having this external, like very, very high resolution display, which is lenticular, so it makes your eyes look like they're deep inset inside the goggles and everything, so they're not plastered on the outside, so it doesn't look cartoony. But I just don't think it's very effective. You can kind of sort of see them, but they're not that effective. Marquise Brownlee said maybe he couldn't see it because his skin was a relatively dark tone, but I've got a very light tone skin, and I did the scanning in front of all these bright lights, so my avatar is pretty bright, and you still can't see the eyes very well at all. Now, on the other hand, when you're doing like immersion or something like that, it shows sort of like a blue sort of like thing, just sort of a color or whatever that's going and moving around, and so it very clearly shows that you're not able to see the other person, and as you dial it back, that color changes to the actual avatar of your eyes. And so that part works. It's just not super, super clear. It's okay. I mean, it's back there, and I think it actually does the trick because it's enough of a suggestion of the eyes that you feel like you're actually looking and talking with the person, but it's not fantastic. It's really interestingly, it works better in person than it does on camera. When I try to take pictures of it, you really can't see the eyes at all. In fact, the thumbnail will probably have a picture of me wearing the glasses, and you'll be like, well, you can't see your eyes at all. It looks like kind of a silly little mess back there. But when you're looking at it instead of with a video, it actually looks much better in terms of looking at it. I don't know why, but anyway, just letting you know that. So even though you'll see the picture and it'll be like, well, that looks terrible, I can't see eyes at all in there, when you actually look at it, you can kind of see that. It just doesn't work quite as well as you think it would. So speaking of that, what about the avatar? So what they do is when you want to create the avatar, when you're doing the setup, you actually take the Vision Pro off and you look at it. You turn your head, you do all of these things. If you do it, make sure that you're in like good lighting, you've got makeup on if you want makeup or something like that, and you look relatively good because it sticks around. It's not like it changes or anything like that. That's your avatar. I made the mistake of doing it after wearing it, and so my avatar actually has a little outline because it was like, I was wearing the glasses in front of my face for a long time, and so I've got a little outline on my avatar. I can go back and redo it sometime. But anyway, the creation is relatively straightforward, but Lane, she looked at it. I FaceTime called her and she was like, this is super uncanny valley. It's a weird thing. It's like this, it's basically like Polar Express level version of reality, right? So the Tom Hanks movie from 2001, something like that, a while back, but it's that weird uncanny valley where everything doesn't quite look right. I think that Apple probably should have gone backwards a couple of steps and made the avatars more cartoony and fun and cute until they can jump over that uncanny valley. Because right now I have to say it is kind of creepy and the avatar looks weird. So, it is what it is. You judge for yourself. It looks very plasticky and everything. It doesn't look real. It's cool that it works. I mean, it's cool when you smile, it smiles. When you talk, it talks, all of that kind of stuff. But it could be significantly better. And I think that what they should have done is just dialed it back and made it more cartoony until it's good enough for it to pass over the uncanny valley and be good enough for people to think it's real. And in terms of using that avatar, it works for FaceTime. FaceTime calls are very, very cool. And like I said, that's awesome that it works. And it allows you to use the goggles and talk to other people without, having to like take that off or have just a blank spot there or something. So it's definitely better than that. As far as I know, it doesn't work with Zoom, Google Meets, etc. I could be wrong about that, but I don't believe it's integrated with them yet. So that's definitely something that will need to happen. All right, so on to built-in apps. There aren't that many built-in apps. There's the web browser, there's things like that. The clear winners are the immersive things. So the dinosaur experience one is really, really cool. It takes a minute for it to boot up and everything, but there's like a butterfly and it can land on your finger. And then the dinosaurs come out and they come right up in your face, and it's pretty freaky. My wife actually experienced that. I had her do that, and unfortunately she was having to hold the thing to the back of her head because, like I said, the bands are too big for her. But she found it, even without the prescription and everything, she found it very, very effective, as you can see from her reaction to all of it. Then we can move on to Apple TV Plus, and they have a few, not that many yet, but they have these immersive experiences where they've shot it in basically 180-degree immersion. The Highliner one was outstanding. I was just like, it's this woman who's walking 3,000 feet above the deck in Norway, and you're just like, oh gosh, it's crazy, experiencing it with her, and it feels really, really good. Again, except for that stupid little arrow that's sitting there all the time that you can't make go away, and so, it really, really wrecks that immersion experience, but it's fantastic. There's also an incredible 3D rendering of dinosaurs in an immersive experience as well. That is highly recommended. So there's not that many of them yet, but of course that catalog will grow over time. I don't know how complicated the setup is to be able to film this. It would be very cool to find out, and I hope it's not that expensive so a lot of third-party people can go and create these movies, because they are really outstanding and an awful lot of fun to watch. And then I also enjoyed the freeform, like sort of art drawing sort of thing. You can draw things, you can pick out pens, you can pick out markers, and you can draw on the screen. And, you'd think you'd miss the haptic feedback for that, but I actually found it relatively good. It was convincing enough, and I didn't miss it, and I thought it was really good. It's great for like drawing and getting ideas out or something like that. It's freeform, and I thought that was a really good app that was built in as well. And then onto the App Store. The App Store is not super extensive yet. There's a lot of compatible apps that are fine, and that's cool. But in terms of ones that are built specifically for the Apple Vision Pro, not that many yet, because of course it's just a released product, but there's more than I thought there would be, honestly. So Microsoft Word is there, which is interesting, a word processor. I was able to interact with it. It works okay. I would, for spot things, if somebody sends you an email with a Word document in it that you need to make a couple of changes to, works well with the microphone. The typing, of course, with having to look at each letter and then do this with your fingers is not the fastest thing in the world. So I certainly wouldn't be writing a long form document with it, but if you have to make quick changes or something, it can be very useful for that. There's an app called A Cozy Luna that lets you sort of like pick out pieces and put together little 3D models and stuff. Very cool, very restful and things like that. On the opposite end of things, there is Synth Riders, which is definitely a takeoff of Beat Sabers, which by the way is my favorite thing to do on the Meta Quest 2. Love Beat Sabers. It's very cool. You pick up these sort of balls and you like move them around and hit things and go through rails and avoid stuff. So very much like Beat Sabers. And it's a whole lot of fun. Unfortunately, I can't screen record this because like I said, there are issues with it in terms of, I think, copyright restriction of music or whatnot. I don't know, but I can't record it for you, but it's really fun to play. It's really cool, but definitely missing the haptics. It's really hard to know if you're hitting the things, especially the rails, which are kind of these continuous motions, and so you have to move your hand around to follow it, and you just don't know if you're actually doing it without some sort of like feedback to your hands, because of course you have to be looking at the next thing that's coming down the line, so you can't sit there and like stare at it the whole time as it's going on these rails. But overall, the entertainment aspect is really good. I didn't see a ton of productivity stuff, but I haven't extensively gone through the App Store either. I expect, again, the catalog will grow rapidly now that the product is available. And on to integration with other Apple products and things like that. It works so effing well. It's just amazing. This is where Apple really shines, the whole iOS Mac ecosystem. You plug it in, you give it your iCloud password, it like figures it out. It looks at your iPhone backup and it pulls a bunch of data in. Super, super seamless, very, very quick to get it set up and very, very painless. I had people ask me whether you could use this without being an Apple customer for their other products. It does appear that yes, you can. It's not going to be as effective because you can't use it, quite as tightly integrated as things, but you can definitely use it as a standalone device. It doesn't need that. You just have to create all of the entities, your iCloud entity and all of that kind of stuff on your own and make that happen rather than having it sort of freely uploaded. But if you're already in the Mac ecosystem, you're going to find it really, really fantastic. I, for one, found the screen replacement super cool. In other words, like right now I'm looking at these screens, and what you can do is you can just substitute that out and it pops up a big giant 4K screen that you can drag. You can make it small, you can make it big, you can make it take up most of your view if you want to. That's really, really cool. The one problem is you can't do dual monitor. I've got one monitor here and one monitor here. It does one monitor instead of two. I would love it if they could do two, so you could drag one up over here and one up over here and actually get a dual monitor display. That would be very, very cool. At present, it is limited to one monitor, but the one monitor is very big, super, super crisp. I mean, I can read the text, I can interact with it. It's also weird when you're doing the screen replacement that it uses your keyboard and your mouse, but you can no longer do gestures. So I would highly recommend, especially for doing editing with Final Cut Pro, which by the way, I've played around with and it works pretty darn well. I would highly recommend that they allow you to do pinch, to drag the timeline or something like that, or go pick up an object off of the browser and stick it into the timeline. That kind of stuff would be great. Instead of having to just use your mouse like you traditionally have, why not allow it to have more of that 3D interaction? And maybe it's going to require an upgrade to Final Cut Pro to be able to have access to that sort of functionality. But I hope it doesn't require a rewrite of the apps themselves, because honestly, I would just like it to be able to function like a mouse. I'd like to, again, be able to move my hand to someplace, pinch, drag something, move it around, all of that kind of stuff. It would be really cool if they could do that in the Vision OS. So anyway, overall, the integration is really, really good. And honestly, the Apple Vision Pro could be a very, very expensive entry point into the Apple ecosystem. If somebody who doesn't have the Apple ecosystem gets the Vision Pro, they're probably going to want to get an iPhone. They're going to want to get a MacBook or a Mac Studio or something and sort of, build out from the Vision Pro. So it's an entry point. I doubt that many people are going to use it as an entry point because it's so expensive. It would be cheaper to buy an iPhone and try it out that way, but it could happen. And some people might enter from the high end and work their way lower. All right. So that's what we have that's available available. What is missing at this point? Number one thing that is missing is a bigger battery. I mean, it's obvious that we're going to need a battery that's like twice the size of this, so you can get more like 4 hours of usage out of it, so you can use it on a plane or watch an entire movie without having to plug the thing in. Number two for me personally, YouTube. There is no YouTube app on here. There's a YouTube app on the MetaQuest, and they have some, you know, kind of semi-immersive videos you can watch. So that stuff's very cool. Super, super missing on the Apple Vision Pro. You know, Apple and Google need to get themselves together and figure out how to make that happen, because I definitely miss it. You can use it through Safari's web browser and go into the YouTube, you know, thing on the web browser, but just not as good as having the app itself. The Vision Pro also needs a head strap with a battery pack pocket in it. So I would assume, given the fact that it's just these little magnetic connectors that you can get, that we will at least get a third party that will create that, and Apple should have done it themselves for the launch. But I think that if you put this behind your head and you have the other part in front, it's actually going to feel more balanced, and you won't have to deal with these, like, you know, long cables and things like that dragging down behind you. So I'm a little surprised they didn't do that from the get-go, but I imagine that somebody will create that relatively soon. And if anybody wants to send me like a prototype version or something like that for me to test out, I will be happy to call you out on the channel and, you know, let people know about your product. I think that would be a very nice addition to the Vision Pro. Speaking of hardware additions, I really think that there's going to need to be a direct connector to a wall outlet, so just a USB-C kind of thing. The problem is that Apple has decided to go with a proprietary connector here. It's kind of like almost like a BNC type of thing where it's a pull in and twist. But that's going to make it potentially a little bit difficult. I don't know if they have chips in there that would restrict it so that other people can't plug into this. But anyway, regardless whether Apple does this or somebody else does this and pays a licensing fee to Apple or something, somebody needs to just make just a long cable that plugs into the wall instead. Next up that's missing is haptic something. It could be very, very simple. It could just be like a little elastic band with a small buzzer on the back of it or the front of it that as you're doing it and you pinch, it just goes bzz, 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 like that. Could be a glove with much more extensive stuff in it. I don't think it has to be a lot, but I don't know exactly what Apple has open to third-party hardware developers in terms of their API. But hopefully they've got enough exposed that you could do something like that where you register like that kind of emotion and you can get like a buzzing thing. I think especially for a game like Synth Riders, or even using it with a pen or something to get that feeling of like actually scratching on a piece of paper, but that just a little bit of a buzzing feedback will be very, very helpful. So I don't expect Apple to do this because Apple is all about the minimalist. You can use your hands for everything, but hopefully they will allow a third party or many third-party developers to create something like that. I think it would be a it could be a very simple device. Like I said, wouldn't even have to be a glove. It could just be something you wore on your hand with just a small little buzzer on it, just to give that feedback. It would be really, really nice. It would be really valuable in many instances to have that feedback. So hopefully Apple will be open enough to allow third parties to do that. Next up is a carrying case of something. Again, I spent a lot of money on this. I wish Apple had provided some sort of carrying case with all of the other stuff. But I expect some of you industrious folks out there to come up with a carrying case. And again, if you want to send me a prototype for review, I will be happy to take a look at it and recommend it on the channel if I think it's good. So I think that's important because, you know, this stuff is like, it's expensive and, you know, it's glass and everything here. I don't want to be just dragging it around. I mean, the Vision Pro does come with this thing. It comes with sort of like a little nightshade you can put over your eyes. But I would rather have a carrying case because I'm going to feel a little bit less stressed out about the potential of bumping it into things, breaking it, whatever. It's a very expensive piece of kit and it needs a carrying case. Next up, it needs more software choices, obviously, especially for AR, VR productivity. I know Apple calls it spatial computing, but it's augmented reality, really. Let's be real here. But it just doesn't feel all that pro yet because there's not that many pro apps involved in it. And so that's something that's definitely missing. We need more productivity pro apps, and not just replications of things that already exist, but stuff that take advantage of the abilities of the Vision Pro. Next up, we need a better guest mode or multi-user mode. The current guest mode is okay. It works all right, but I'm going to get back to this in just a minute, but it needs a much more extensive multi-user mode that's sort of from the get-go multi-user. And then the last missing feature, which is connected to a lot of what's going on with Apple right now, is freaking AI. It needs AI. This thing cries out for AI. This is like, please give me something that's a highly integrated large language model with visuals and things like that. Project Ajax apparently is what Apple's internal project is, and they've been working on this for a long time, spent a lot of money buying other companies. But this thing, it felt like, it's like, why did they not introduce the AI, the new version of Siri, the like souped up large language model based version of Siri at the same time as this? It really, really needs it. It needs that voice interface to work properly. So anyway, obviously it didn't all happen at once, but I believe this is the hardware that's set up to run some really, really good AI. And a lot of it can run locally because they've got their neural engines on their chips and everything. So that's built into the Vision Pro, along with like my Mac Studio and my phone and all of that other stuff. So Apple can do a lot of edge-based AI, which could be really, really fast. So if you have an efficient large language model that's quantized properly and it can run on this thing natively, it could be super outstanding. And hey, for folks that want to come up with some good software, I don't have time to do this, but you could take, Meta's Llama model, you could quantize that, take one of the quantized versions and just build an app that's basically a voice interface that allows you to interact with the Vision Pro. I think that Apple could do it better eventually because they can integrate it more heavily. But in the meantime, you could make what could potentially be a very, very popular app where you can just talk to the Vision Pro and it can do things for you. I think that would be a really, really cool app to add to this. So man, this video turned out to be long. It's just so much to talk about. But the final thing to talk about is, do I regret purchasing this? Like I said, I spent my money on this. It was very expensive. So cost versus quality. Quality is generally amazing. It's fantastic for a 1.0 product. The hardware and the software are really outstanding. So there's still little bugs with the UI and everything like that. But the biggest thing in my mind is that the battery is just a gigantic, like, it's like a big giant pimple on a beautiful face or something, right? It's like, what the heck is this thing doing? So they need to figure that out for the next generation for sure. And in the meantime, like I said, I think I would actually prefer it mounted on the back of my head to sort of balance out the front and the back and make it all feel better. Of course, on the downside, the cost is crazy high. I spent almost $4,500. So between buying the more expensive version of the Vision Pro and getting the optics and then getting the Apple Care, because this is too expensive not to get Apple Care, and then taxes and all of that kind of stuff, it was close to $4,500. That is a huge amount of money and something that I just don't have lying around. So it was very painful for me to do that. So definitely something I'm feeling the pain about, and it's a big negative for purchasing this thing. And then of course, tied to that fact is the fact that this is single user, it's single user centric. You can have guest mode and stuff, but that means if you had a family of 4 people and you wanted to outfit everybody with one of these, it's going to cost you somewhere around $16,000 to do that. So that's not going to happen. That's like a year of college at a state college or something like that, or you can just buy 4 of these instead. So most people are not going to be able to do that. And it's a bummer because you really want to be able to share things. It would be great to be able to sit next to your spouse or your friend or whatever and watch these things at the same time and interact with them. So that's definitely a missing feature, is the shareability. Right now, it's very, very solo and very isolating. It would be really cool someday to have these things be much more shareable. But in the meantime, it'd be really nice to be able to take it off your head, put it on somebody else's head, have it very quickly adapt to them, know who they are, have a profile basically for, 4 or 5 people, something like that. And so it adapts to their profile quickly, and then they can take their turn at a game or something, or doing software, whatever it is. That is something that's very much in the negative category, is how isolating, how expensive, how solo it is right now. The next and very obvious thing is it's missing a killer app. Beautiful hardware, beautiful software, missing that thing that makes it absolutely necessary. I think this is likely to happen in the industrial space because of the fact that it's so expensive and businesses are going to be more likely to purchase this than individuals. So something in AR and factories and labs and stuff like that. And speaking of that, that's another reason why it's really bad that this is so single user centric. I think the ultimate use case for this is going to be shareable, where you can have multiple people wearing them if you can afford that. But if not, you can easily take it off and put it on somebody else's head and say, look at this factory layout, look at how we can do these robots, and let's see, we can move these things around or something like that. Maybe there's some kind of programming or something for robots, so you can program a robot arm just by moving it through space or something. I mean, these are really, really cool potential apps that don't exist yet, but they could, and they could be killer. And if you happen to figure out what that killer app is, you could end up making a mint. So overall, I wish I had a definite answer for you, but the jury is still out. I think it's got amazing potential. That's sort of what it is. It's sort of like a baby. It's like, look at this baby. It's got all of this potential. It could grow up to be an amazing, amazing individual, but it's not there yet. So the jury is still out. I just don't really have a good way of judging it at this point. My recommendation would be to go to the Apple Store now that it's out and, get a demo, have them demo it for you and test it out, put it on, try it out and see what you think about it. It's going to be a little hard in 15 minutes to get a really good sense of it, but I think you'll at least get the basic idea of whether it works well or not and whether it's for you or not. So that's what I've got for you after just a few hours of use. I will come back in a couple of weeks and do another more extensive review and talk about things that I've discovered, but that's what I know at this point. If you have an Apple Vision Pro, definitely let me know in the comments what you think about it and your thoughts. And even if you don't, let me know about missing features, about what you think could be positive, what you think people could do for the killer app, all of that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.